This life is hard. I don't want to have another one. So I didn't want to accept that past lives or reincarnating was real. But I decided just to start asking questions and stay open-minded.
For generations, women were shamed for trusting themselves, sensing things before they happen, and believing in their own power. No one encouraged them to embrace it until now. Welcome to Trust Yourself.
You guys really showed us some love on our past life episode where I talked about Nora's past life story, my daughter, and Heidi talked about her Colorado experience going into a past life regression, learning about her past life story. But we got a lot of comments from people wanting to hear more of Nora's story because I did kind of glaze over that because I went into it in depth in another podcast called Two Girls, One Ghost. If you don't know them, please go listen to them. They're amazing. But today I wanted to take some time to really dive into more of Nora's story and maybe a little bit of snippets that weren't actually in the Two Girls, One Ghost story. So
get the exclusive here.
Yeah, exclusive interview. Oh my gosh. But first, I want to start off with some gratitude because, gosh, you guys have, again, been outpouring some love for us. And we could not thank you more because just starting this off on our own, not really knowing what to do. We've never done a podcast before, obviously. So you have shown up and you have made us feel so good. So thank you.
First, want to shout out Rebecca Lindsay. She's been binging all of our episodes. She shared our podcast episodes on her Instagram story. Thank you so much, Rebecca. We see you and we love you. Also, Jody Walker. Jody Walker commented and said, I'm really enjoying the banter and insight Heidi and Elise have. I don't even know how I came across this podcast. It just kept automatically playing every time I put my earbuds in. Talk about a nudge from the universe.
No, really, listen to them. I swear they're good.
I honestly, I was trying to figure out how it possibly could have happened. And I was like, I don't know, but I fucking love it. So thank you, Jody. Allie Williams. Allie Williams says, I love this podcast. It's been my go-to since discovering it. So thank you. And lastly, we have from Hey Jax Baxter. She says, I found you guys and your podcast through your sister's page on TikTok, and I'm obsessed. It's so real and refreshing compared to the choreographed spiritual fluff of TikTok. So I just wanted to say, I hope you guys keep going, get that #1 spot on the podcast, and continue to share realistic videos because people like me are loving it. All the best. Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. That's seriously, it fills our cup and it's better than any paycheck, honestly.
Yeah. We also have a ton of personal DMs that people have written in. So we're not going to read those too, but we thank you. We see your comments. We really appreciate it.
It's just really, really lovely to see all the energy that we're putting into this is being well received and being heard across different countries and
24 countries and counting.
24 countries. That's insane to me.
That's awesome.
I can't thank you guys enough.
Those Europeans, they really support us.
Probably because episode 2.
Oh God. my awful German accent story. No.
If you haven't heard, go back and listen. It's going to be one of those that goes down in history that Sissy is going to cringe every time somebody brings it up or talks about it. But it's one of those that resonates with so many people. So I'm glad you shared. Thank you, Sissy.
Sehr gut. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
Diving in now.
All right. Yes. So let's get into my daughter's past life story, the full version. This is everything I know to date. She is currently 8 years old, and this story has been happening since, I would say, probably when she was a year and a half. Nora is my mysterious middle. I have 3 kids. My youngest is Frank. My oldest is Harriet. And the day that Nora was born, I had this overwhelming feeling that she was going to die young and tragically. And it was such a strong feeling that I even told my husband, I was like, Sean, oh my God, this is terrible to say, but I think she's going to die. It's going to be tragic. And he just, he's supportive. He's like, well, that sucks, but he's brushing it off as like that natural protective mommy feeling. But I never had that with my other kids. That feeling, eventually it went away, thank goodness. But after learning about more of Nora's past life stories, I'm wondering now if instead of a premonition, it was actually just residual energy from her past life. At least that's what I hope, right? So when Nora was really young, a toddler, she was really slow to speak, actually. She didn't say much, but when she did start to speak, she would speak in full sentences. And they'd be like really interesting phrases, right? That's not something that a toddler would typically say. I wish I could think of something, but she would also call me mother instead of mom, which is really weird because
Also rude. I don't want to be called mother.
oh my God, freaking rude, daughter. I mean, just picture like a little 18-month-old. Mother, my pacifier, please.
Well, and it's not even like you never called yourself mother. So it's like,
Oh,
where
God, no.
did you get that?
And we never called our mom mother, except for like if we're mad.
When we were mad. Yeah.
But she never heard that. She never heard that. Not only that, but she was very proper in her actions. She still kind of is, but for a toddler, she would, every time we would sit at the dinner table, she would sit up straight. She would cross her legs off to the side, put her hands on her knees.
It was like crossing her ankles. Like even, it was just like.
Yes, so proper. Even the daycare teachers were like, she's very proper and she's got like that old soul about her. Like, little do you know, lady.
She's real old. Benjamin Button shit.
Yeah. She was also, this is really funny, but when she was learning to crawl, I have a video of her. She looks so angry because she's like slapping her hands on the floor because it's like she's pissed. She didn't want to be on the floor on all fours. She wants to walk. And so she's like, slap, 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 slap. What the fuck, Mom? Make me go faster.
I should know how to run by now. God damn it. And wouldn't she like crawl really fast? I remember her like, like crawling really fast. Like,
yeah, she went fast, but it looked weird. It's just like her body is forced back in this little container and she's so pissed about it.
well, I mean, if you think about it energetically or even like as a soul who's like been used to walking and doing all these things. And now it's like, you're back into a tiny baby body.
Son of a bitch. Yep. She's also always been very independent and she figures things out on her own. All kids are different, right? But I could tell there was just some deep, deep thought going on behind her eyes. And every time I had some comment or some question, she would just process it and eloquently tell me her feelings. Then the kind of scary part that happened was around 18 months old. She started waking up every single night after she finally slept through the night. And like, thank God she's sleeping through the night. And then boom, then she starts waking up every single night screaming in terror that her legs and her feet hurt really bad. And this went on for quite some time, like months, almost a year, I think.
Yeah, it's a really long time.
There was one night, it wasn't just like, waking up, my legs hurt, and then she goes back to bed. She was up for hours. And this one night she would not go back to sleep. And it was like 3 hours of her screaming. And so I looked at my husband, I looked at Sean and I said, I'm taking her to ER. I don't know what else to do. And I knew it wasn't going to go well because there's nothing on her legs that I could see physically that was happening, but she was in pain. So in the ER, they looked her over and they're like, well, it's probably growing pains. Okay.
No. God, it just sucks when you can't get answers. It's so hard, especially when it's your kid and it's a young kid and yeah.
And so I followed up with a couple doctors and then it ended up with them giving me a prescription for an antifungal because they thought she had athlete's foot. Yeah. And then she broke out because she was allergic to the antifungal. I'm like, screw this. Anyway, it just mysteriously went away after she was like maybe 2. And I mean, just as quick as it came, it stopped, but it was strange. So I'll get back to that later. But also around this time, she would constantly say she was a boy. And me being, fairly liberal parent, I'd be like, oh, honey, you can be whatever you want to be, but we're not going to make any changes right now. You're 2. And she'd say, no, I'm a boy. I'm a boy. It was when she was 4. I was putting away laundry in one of the kids' rooms and I overheard Nora and Harriet talking. I forgot what Harriet said, but Nora responded with, oh yeah, like when I was a boy. And my ears perked up and I said, when you were a boy? When was this? And she just looks at me so nonchalantly and, well, before I came here to be with you, Mother. I was a boy. Then I died when I was 8. I went to heaven. And then I came here to be with you. I chose to be with you. Interesting. Later on, I went to a psychic and I asked about her and if, is this actually a past life? Is she pulling my leg? And if so, why did she choose to be with me? This family's crazy. But the psychic actually said that, yes, this is a real past life. And I'm getting the feeling that in her past life, she was born into money. She was born into a really wealthy family. And in this life, she wants to learn that it's not easy to make money. And I'm like, well, son of a bitch. That sucks.
But you're going to show her that you can make money doing what you love, not killing yourself at a corporate position.
There you go. Yeah, if anything, maybe she'll get that out of it. I don't know. But anyway, that was a side note. I thought that was kind of funny. So she said, I chose to be with you now in this life. Now, I'm not necessarily a skeptic. However, at that point, I had never considered a past life or reincarnation to be real, or at least for me, I thought, oh, this is just a different religion thing. I don't know. Honestly, like I didn't want to have another life. I'm like, oh, this life is hard. I don't want to have another one. So I didn't want to accept that past lives or reincarnating was real. But I decided just to start asking questions and stay open-minded because I feel like the worst thing that I could do at that point in time is to tell her, oh, no, you're just dreaming. Oh, honey, you have such a wild imagination because, it's hard to believe the unbelievable or things you can't physically prove. So I started to ask questions like, well, when you were a boy, did you have a mom and a dad? Yes. Did they talk like we did, or did they sound different, like a different language? And she said, sort of like us in English, I think, but sounded a little funny. So I'm thinking like an accent or something. And she said, but I don't talk like that anymore. Then I asked, what sort of clothes did you wear? And she said, I wore boy clothes, but when I was a baby, I wore dresses. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, that sounds pretty oldish. I mean, I think that still happened like a generation or two behind us.
Oh, I remember mom's like baby picture. She was like in a dress, and then same with her brother.
Yeah.
Her brother, Steve.
My brother, Steve.
Mom only has one brother, but every time she talks about him, she always says, my brother, Steve. Like we don't know who the hell her brother is.
Which brother, Mom?
Oh, you know my brother? Steve. Sorry, inside family joke, but
now you're in on it.
Now you're in on it because welcome to the sisterhood.
Oh, man. So then I wanted to know what kind of clothes her parents wore, because maybe that could help me. If this is true, again, staying open-minded, I could try and nail down an era, right? A time period when this took place. So I said, what kind of clothes? Did she wear jeans and a t-shirt like me? And Nora said she wore a dress that was really tight and it crisscrossed in the middle. And then she put a big dress over it and it was big. There was a big bow and it was poofy at the bottom. And of course, Sean's like, oh, well, she watches Frozen all the time. It could be Elsa and Anna that's influencing this. But I continued, like, yep, sure. Okay, what did your daddy wear? And casually she answered, wedding clothes. I'm like, oh, okay, so formal clothing, right? But sometimes he wore a blue outfit with a blue hat and a gold metal eagle in the middle with its wings kind of up like this, like spread out. And there were gold buttons down his front, and he had big boots. Like, ooh. Okay, I better start recording this because that sounds interesting.
She got real specific.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, wow, that sounds like military or something. Then I proceeded to ask a lot of questions over the next few weeks, and she told me that her name was Abby. And her siblings were like, Abby's a girl's name, not boy. But Nora was adamant that her name was Abby when she was a boy. And then she also said her dad's name was Crew, but she couldn't remember her mom's name, but she thought it sounded a lot like her current brother's name, which is Frank. So I was thinking like Francine, Frankie, Francis, I don't know. She said there were 2 boys and 2 girls. So she had 2 sisters and 1 brother, and she thought her sister's name was Lily, but she does have a friend at daycare whose name is Lily. So I took that with a grain of salt. And she said she wasn't the oldest, but she wasn't the youngest either. And she also said she had 2 dogs. And her dad liked to wear his uniform and work on ships. And her mom liked to read books to people. Like, oh, this sounds so lovely. She also said she could see the ocean every day from her house. And at this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. But of course, I'm still like a little hesitant. I want to ask more questions. So I asked her if she could draw a picture of her house. And she got really excited because she loves art. She loves to draw. So she drew up.
She's a fabulous freaking drawer, man. She's
Actually,
so good.
it's really good.
Insanely good. Like, we should post a picture because it's dark sometimes.
It's a little morbid.
Dark shit now.
A little morbid.
It's fucking hilarious though. Like, it's hilarious dark shit. But she is amazing.
She is.
Love her.
So her house that she drew, she kind of drew it as like a plan, which I'm kind of laughing. Like, both of your parents are architects, so of course you draw a floor plan. So she drew like where everybody slept, and she said she slept with her brother in one big bed and her sisters slept in bunk beds. And then when I asked where her mom and dad slept, she drew 2 separate beds. And I asked if she meant to draw one bed. She goes, no, they're in separate beds. And I am thinking about, did I leave the History Channel on or something? Like, how does she know that husbands and wives used to have separate beds? And so I did a quick Google search for when did couples sleep in separate beds? And the response was, for almost a century between 1850s and 1950s, separate beds were seen as a healthier, more modern option for couples than the double.
Can we go back to that?
I do think that is becoming a trend again. Honestly, I think my husband would like it because I snore like a motherfucker.
Yes, this is true. You do.
I think I need to get one of those CPAPs or something. I don't know.
Or at least try the like nasal strips or something. Or try the mouth tape that Kent uses, that hostage tape.
God, that's like suffocating. No. So I decided at that point, like, if this story is real, I'm going to try and figure out this date when my daughter was a boy named Abby. And right now I've got it narrowed down to about a century between 1850s and 1950s. So since I think women's fashion is a lot more notable over the years and easier to kind of notice trends and changes, I made a collage of women's clothing styles through the decades.
Love it.
And a second collage of women's hairstyles through the decades. And they're all from, I think I started at the 1800s and I went all the way to like 1950s, 1990s, just in case. But I didn't put any dates on the pictures just in case she could read them, even though I don't think she could read at that point. So I asked her to point out what her mommy used to wear. Like, what outfits looked more like your mommy? And also, how did her hair used to look? And she looked at both of the collages for a while and she picked out the 1870s clothing style and the 1880s hairstyles. I'm like, oh, that's close. And still thinking that this could be a pretty big coincidence, then I asked her, did you live in the United States? She kind of nodded like, I think so. Then I asked her if she knew who the president was, because at that point, I think Donald Trump was in the presidency for the first time. And she actually knew who he was because everybody was talking about him. So I'm like, well, if she can recognize the president now, maybe back then she could recognize a notable president when she was 8. So I pulled out one of those US posters of presidents and I said, do you know which one was president when you were a boy? She goes, yeah. And she found Ulysses S. Grant and she pointed at him. Well, Grant served, if you don't know your American history, like I don't.
I don't. Please inform me. I'm like, that sounds cool. Was that like 2 years ago, 5 years ago? Right? I don't know. I mean, I know it was a long time ago, but you could have been like, yeah, it was in 1960. I'm like, sweet. I love that.
Yeah, smart.
God, I'm awful.
No, me too. So Grant actually served from 1869 to 1877. We are still in that same decade that she's talking about. He was most known for being a commanding general in the Union Army before his presidency. And also, according to Nora, after she pointed at this, she's like, my dad really liked him. I'm like, oh, well, if he was in the Union Army, makes sense why he would like Ulysses S. Grant. And then just to confirm that this isn't another insane coincidence, I waited a week and then I showed Nora another poster of presidents. But this time I picked a different poster with different caricatures. And this one specifically, like Ulysses S. Grant, had different facial hair. So I think in one he had a beard and one he didn't. So I kind of wanted to throw her off a little bit, You
really wanted to trick her.
Getting kind of tricky here. And she studied it again, and sure as shit, she points to Grant once again, and she rolls her eyes. She's like, Mom, I already told you it was this guy. Or maybe she said gentleman in such a proper, I don't remember.
Right.
So after I picked up my jaw off the floor, of course, I brought in a map of the United States and I asked her if she could point out which state she lived in. And again, she's 4, so I thought maybe it's a long shot, but she might know. She picked out Grant twice. Might as well pick out a state. And she started to point towards Minnesota, but then she takes her finger back. She's like, no, that's where I live now. It was the roundish one. Oh, here, this one. And she slams her finger on Maine. And quick side note, this was before, Heidi, before you moved to Maine.
Yeah. And it was before I even talked about it.
Yep, before we even visited Maine. And so I said, do you remember what city or town in Maine? She's like, East. And I'm like, oh, okay, East Maine. Cool. So I brought up open a big map of Maine, one of like Dad's big atlas physical maps. It's one of the emergency maps in the back of my car, just in case I need the road map because my GPS isn't working. And I said, can you find the city on here? Do you remember? If you remember, can you find it? Of course, her little finger starts to circle this area in the north end of Maine. And guess what was right in the middle of that little circle? Frickin' Eastport, Maine.
Yep.
Okay. Again, people could be like, okay, she's pointing anywhere. She happened to say East. It happens to be Eastport. You're like making connections. Hold your horses, guys. I promise it's going to get even better.
Buckle up. Buckle up. This is just the beginning.
I know, right? Gosh, I don't know why we didn't do this the first time. I'm sorry. Guys. I left out all the good stuff.
Well, we did. I mean, you did say a lot of this on the other podcast. So I get it. But we have a different audience. So let's tell them.
Let's share the love. Okay, so then I researched the history of Eastport, and it is a really cute little port city, a couple thousand residents with gorgeous ocean views. They're also known for building clipper ships and being the easternmost city in the United States, right on the Canadian border. So this is like freaking nuts to me. Like my daughter was born around the 1870s, 1880s, lived in Eastport, Maine with 2 sisters, a brother, and now I'm curious about her name. So I went on a few baby name websites to look up Abby, because there's some baby name websites that give you like the history of names, which is pretty cool. And guess what? Abby was a popular boy's name back in the 1850s to 1900s, usually as a nickname for Abner. What the fuck, you guys? Yep. I was like, what?
I remember when you called me and told me that, I was like, done. I'm convinced this is it. Like, that's all I needed to hear. And I was like, yep, she was Abby, obviously.
So after I read that, I had a flashback to when Nora's sister Harriet was teaching her to write her own name. And Nora would say, my name starts with A. And Harriet would say, no, Nora ends with A. It starts with an N. And Nora would storm off so frustrated. She's like, it starts with A.
God.
Ignorant me, I'm just like chalking it up to dyslexia or just an angry toddler, but
she wasn't wrong.
So we started noticing so many other instances that we could verify the lifestyles of the 1800s. And probably the creepiest, which we talked about last time, was when we got the kids a marble set for Christmas. So yes, this included the plastic connector pieces to create towers for the marbles to go down. And Nora especially loved this. The other kids were like, yeah, okay, it's cool. Off to the next present. But Nora was like, the marbles. And of course, at this point, we were always talking about Nora's past life and asking her questions. So I don't remember if it was me or the kids asking her, but somebody asked her, Nora, did you play with marbles when you were a boy? And she responded with, yes, but the marbles didn't look like this. And we didn't have this stuff. Her hands were like waving over the plastic pieces. So she said, we would sit on the floor with a big circle and we would try to flick the marbles into the circle and bounce the other marbles out of the circle. And there's one big marble and other smaller marbles. And so she just sat there and taught us how to play frickin' marbles, like the original marbles. Yep. And my husband, Sean, looks at me. He's like, well, Nora, did you play marbles at daycare this week or something? And Nora looks at her dad and she's like, no, Dad, that would be irresponsible. We can't play with marbles. We're toddlers.
We're only 4. People would put them in their noses.
Yes. And I think at that point, he's like, okay, interesting. He's starting to believe now. Also, she kind of talked about how the marbles weren't clear. They had different colors, but they weren't clear. And I did look it up, and I think marbles they started off as more like clay, so they were opaque, which I also thought was interesting because we don't own any opaque marbles. Here's some other interesting moments. One day we were talking about horses, and she told us how she used to ride horses, but her mom and her sister had to sit on the side with their legs on the side because they were ladies and they had poofy dresses. I'm like, okay, cool. There was another time she talked about swimming at a pool, and her swimsuit was like long shorts, but it came all the way up over her shoulders too. She said it covered all of me. Like, oh, interesting. Yeah. And that's how men's swimsuits used to be back in the 1880s. Yeah. And then later, one time we were having milk and she told us how her milk used to come in glass jars at the front door, not jugs. She didn't get it at the store. A nice milkman dropped it off for her in the front of her house.
That's wild.
Let's see what else. Oh. When I asked her what kind of food she likes to eat, she said French food. And she started to describe something. She was like, a warm sandwich pie with crumbly meat inside, which I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, a mincemeat pie. And she's like, no, that's not what it was called. But when I did some research, there is a mincemeat pie called a tortilla. I think I'm saying that right? Tortilla.
Sure.
Which according to Google is a very traditional French-Canadian food.
Yeah. And I mean, she was on the border of the French-Canadian border.
That makes sense. So then I'm like, oh, your favorite food, you said, was it a tortilla? She goes, that's it. Yeah, it's that. Not the mincemeat pie. Okay. Gosh, I mean, there are other things too. She also talked about, she had a story about when she fell down and she lost all of her teeth, and she pointed to which teeth she lost. And at this point, she didn't lose any teeth yet. Also, when I asked her about her school, she said it was white with a bell on the outside, and there were 3 classrooms with older kids too. And I looked up the historical school in Eastport, which because it's really small, there was only one school. And it said it only had 1 classroom. So I'm like, that's interesting. However, reading more, in 1875, when there was rapid growth in the small town, the school was renovated to hold 3 classrooms and included upper level students. I'm like, how did she freaking know that? So now there's no doubt in my mind. And even Sean's, we were like, okay, you actually have these memories from the 1800s. Then I was really curious about how she died, but I didn't want to kind of...
So Nora, tell me how you died.
So I kind of coaxed her with some candy. Nora, tell mommy how you died when you were a little boy.
Tell me your secrets.
I'll give you another Smartie. No, it was terrible. But I did ask her if it was okay if we talked about it. And sometimes she didn't want to talk about it. And so I'm like, okay, we'll come back to it. And eventually she was okay to talk about it. She's still a little reserved. She said when she was 8 years old, she was in the living room of her house and a chandelier fell on top of her and her puppy that she was holding. And there was a fire from the candles, I'm assuming, on the chandelier. And then she pointed to her tummy and she said, something in here broke and the doctors couldn't fix it. And she and her puppy died. And then I was suddenly recalling how when Nora used to wake up with night terrors, screaming bloody frickin' murder that her legs and her feet hurt, I'm wondering, like, did she relive that life when a chandelier fell on her and maybe it like paralyzed or crushed her legs or fire burned her legs? Oh, that's terrible. But who knows, right?
That was my thought, was like the fire, or if she like severed her spine or something. Like even if she's pointing to her tummy, it's like, yes, on the backside of your tummy, but
right? Yeah. Who knows? So I said, oh, Nora, I'm so sorry. Your family must have been really sad. And she got really somber and she's like, yes, but they put a candle on a plate and floated it in the ocean for me. And it made me really happy. And I stayed and I watched them until they died when they were old too. And Harriet, my oldest, she goes, oh, cool. So you were a ghost in their house? And Nora got so offended. She's like, no, I was not a ghost. I was an angel, a beautiful angel.
I remember when she said that. That was so sweet.
And then I spent a few days trying to figure out the exact dates when she died. And so
You spent I remember you researching this like until 3 a.m. and then working too, but you weren't working. You were like, I didn't do any work today because I was deep in the library of Eastport, Maine obituaries.
This was a couple firms ago, so hopefully they've forgotten about it now. It doesn't matter.
It's fine.
I was young.
Doesn't matter now.
Anyway, oh gosh, I did research on ancestry.com and findagrave.com. And so just because I'm talking about actual people, I kind of want to slightly change their names and dates because I don't want to offend any living relatives in any way. So when I asked her if she remembered her birthday, she easily rattled off like January 21st, which is not her current birthday, by the way. It is April. Then she died in spring of 1889, she said. That's what she remembered. I'm like, holy shit. Okay. So she remembered January 21st and spring of 1889. So I know she died when she was 8 years old. So I wanted to test her a little to see if she could pick out her birth year. So I said, were you born in 1883? She goes, no. 82? No. 81? Yes. Are you sure? Was it 80? No, Mom. I said 81, 81. So got dates now. Let's get a subscription to ancestry.com and find all related information. So I searched the whole state of Maine, just in case he was born maybe outside of Eastport. I searched for an Abner born on January 21st in 1881, died in 1889. The search brought up 50 hits. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can look through 50 people. It's not bad. There were only a handful of Abners as a first name, and the dates ranged close to the dates that Nora listed, but not exactly. There was one Abner that was born in Portland in 1880 and died in Washington County, which I think is also Eastport, in 1888. But the death certificate said died from eating poison berries. I was like, oh, well, that's sad.
That's very specific. I love it.
Very specific, but not my Abner. And then the rest of the Abners were middle names. And then eventually one stuck out to me. He was born in January 1881 and died in spring 1889. And this was the only Abner with those exact dates. And guess what city he was born and died in? Eastport, Maine. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
His full name, however, his middle name was Abner. His full name was Frank Abner Cook. Also a little weird that I named my son Frank. Is it weird?
It's all serendipitous.
So the parents' names were different from what Nora recalled, not Crew, but the parents were actually originally born in Canada, and the dad was in the Civil War and enlisted in the Navy. So this was all starting to align, except I noticed on the mother's death certificate that she had 10 children. And I'm like, fuck. Well, this isn't it, because Nora was adamant that there were 2 girls and 2 boys. However, when I looked at the dates, there were only 4 children alive when Frank Abner lived and died. 2 girls and 2 boys. Chills.
Mm-hmm. Goosies are happening again, even though I know the story.
I know. So unfortunately, the death certificate had cause of death unmarked, but I guess like death by chandelier is not really common.
I mean, they said the berries, so
they did.
But also maybe, like Nora said, something in here broke. Maybe they didn't know exactly what it was. So they're like, it was some internal damage, but we don't know exactly why he died.
Yep. And then also interesting, the 4 children's names were Martha, Lillian, which she said Lily, Frank, and Harry. My daughter, Harriet, we sometimes call her Harry. I also think that's kind of weird that...
I just think it's so beautiful. It's so cool.
Crazy.
It's so freaking cool.
And yeah, I think the dad's name was Adam or something, but he worked as a crew member on multiple ships in the Navy in the harbor. So maybe that's why she thought his name was Crew. The grandfather's name was also Frank. So we're thinking perhaps this Frank Jr. went by Abner or Abby instead of Frank because didn't want to confuse their name with Grandpa Frank.
Yeah.
I don't know. Of course, all of this is like speculation, but just things to think about.
Well, it wasn't really speculation, especially because also you pulled up a a bunch of different clothing options for like the Civil War era. And didn't she point out, like you looked it up and that gold eagle emblem and everything on that uniform was exactly right.
Unfortunately, there were apparently a lot of different uniforms back in the Civil War era because everyone just grabbed whatever they could and made uniforms. But there were some specific emblems like the hats and the eagles that were exactly how she showed it. Kind of gave me chills. So yeah. Okay, fast forward to when we decided to take our first trip to Maine. We're like, holy shit, all of this information came. Now we're going to Maine. Let's take her to Eastport. Like, what can happen? I was so excited that like I'm determined in that trip, we're going to take her there. And once we started getting on the plane, I noticed that Nora was a little weird, a little nervous. And when we landed, she was really quiet and she's kind of taking it all in. And then on our drive to the hotel, she said, I remember these big trees. Indeed. I love these trees. Yeah, she did say indeed a lot, which was funny. So we were staying in Portland. Eastport was about 4.5 hours away, but I didn't care. I really wanted to take her. But the day we were ready to go, Mom actually stopped me and said, do you think Nora even wants to go to Eastport? And of course, I'm selfishly like, didn't think about that.
I don't care. I'm bringing her.
Yeah, I want to freaking take her. So I did ask her. And when I did, her eyes kind of welled up. She goes, I don't want to go back there. Please, let's not go. And so just as much as I really wanted to, I'm like, we're not going to take her and make her feel uncomfortable. I respect that. So we ended up going to the beach instead in Portland. When we were on that beach, we were over by what was that called, Heidi?
Well, that was an Old Orchard Beach, not Portland.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So we were up at Old Orchard Beach on the pier, the historic pier. When we were there, Nora said, I remember this beach. I was here, but she pointed to the pier and she said, but this wasn't here. And I thought that was strange because that's a historic pier. However, when I Googled it, the pier was built in 1898, which was after Abby died. Yep. And then the other funny story was when we were at Salem, we toured the Ropes Mansion, which is, if you are a Hocus Pocus fan, it is Allison's house in Hocus Pocus, the Yabos girl.
The beautiful big white house. It's so nice.
Yes. Yeah.
Lovely.
It's a perfectly preserved museum of the Ropes family from the 19th century. And my kids were like zooming around the house. Like they're bored because they're in a museum. But Nora walked slowly through each room and looking at all the artifacts. And then she was really excited when she saw the 4-poster bed in the master bedroom. And she said that her mom and dad each had one of these beds in their rooms, except the curtains weren't blue like this. They were red with flowers. And then one of the tour guides looked over at us like, what the hell is she talking about?
It's a long story, sir. You don't want to know.
Right? Oh, God. But eventually, she started getting older and now she's 8 and she does not remember anything. And there was one time when I tried to ask her more and she goes, yeah, I think I made the whole thing up. So I'm like,
sure.
I really hope you didn't, but
there is no doubt in my mind that was her past life and she remembered it. And now it's just her logical brain trying to take over and being like, oh no, I made the whole thing up, but no, there's no way.
That's the full story, folks. And I'm sorry that was so long, but thanks for sticking around. And I hope this resonated with you, whether or not you believe in it or not, but maybe actually just makes you open up your mind just a little bit to think, what if?
Yeah. On that note, shall we do a tarot?
Shall we? Tarot time.
For things, believing in what you don't believe in. If you don't believe in tarot, let me tell you, you should. Okay. I had a bunch of flyers. Ooh, okay. This is interesting. Okay. So we got the 9 of Acorns, which is power and perseverance, which is represented by the panther, but it was in the reverse position. So I feel like there was almost like this feeling of being powerless with the collective, because this is like the collective reading, right? But then we got the 2 of Acorns, which is insight and focus, represented by the hawk, which to me is saying that we feel powerless, but if we if we can use our insight and tap into our intuition, then we will have that clear focus, and that will kind of bring back this power, because we lose our power when we stop trusting ourselves. So how about we all start trusting ourselves this week?
Yes.
And then also got the Knight of Acorns, which is action and drive. And I know we've gotten this card before. It's the wild boar, which just charges ahead and goes and does what it needs to do. And that came out right with the Five of Acorns, which is challenge and growth. And that one is represented by a cougar. Didn't I say cougar last time? And it was a puma. I don't know. It's a big cat. Got it, guys. It's another big cat. So the action and drive, it's going to be challenging to take action, and it's going to be challenging to drive forward. But once we realize our power by tapping into our intuition, we're going to be able to take that step forward, right? And then the outcome that we have is Two of Crystals, which is balance and adaptability, the kangaroo. And the kangaroo has that big tail to help balance them out while they're freaking hopping around. And it's very powerful. But it's all about balance. And this is a lot of acorns. This is a lot of material energy, a lot of earth energy. So I'm feeling like we're making a lot of changes in our life physically this week. So charge forward, tap into your intuition, and we will come out with balance. And that's what you need to know this week.
Awesome. Well, I hope that has inspired you and gotten you excited for this week, or I guess the weekend. And we're really excited that you listened in. If this gets you excited, like it makes me excited, please feel free to share and send it to your bestie, your sister, your brother. Send it to an Abby you know.
Just send it to literally everyone in your contacts. That's all we're asking. Please.
And like and share and review and give us stars. No, that's asking a lot. But thank you so much for listening again. And until next time, it's your move, sis.
Make it count.
Bye.